Welcome to this explainer. Let me ask you a question right off the bat. Do you think the 2026 EV wars are being won by those flashy, brand new car designs we see everywhere, or by tried and true, decade-old platforms? We usually assume newer is always better, right? Well, today, we're diving into the hard data from the first half of 2026, and honestly, the results might completely flip how you look at market success.
So, here is our roadmap for today. 1. We're redefining market dominance. 2. Checking out the 2026 sales leaderboard. 3. Looking at the German resistance. And 4. Delivering the strategic verdict.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, Redefining Market Dominance. It is time to really rethink what makes an automaker a powerhouse.
You know, in the business world, people often mistake dominance for just having a massive, sprawling catalog of a million different products. But true dominance? It's way more precise than that. Think of it as an anchor. An anchor is this incredible stabilizing force. It provides structural rigidity while everyone else is just getting tossed around by the shifting tides of what consumers want. What this means, in plain English, is that power comes from concentration. Instead of spreading your engineers and your cash thin across dozens of overlapping, kind of similar models, you go all in on a high-volume, low-variety approach. You build just a few top sellers. You build them unbelievably well, and you unlock these massive economies of scale. You stop just playing in the market, and you become the anchor holding the whole thing down.
And this brings us to what we call the longevity paradox. There is this stubborn myth floating around that EVs have super short lifespans and need constant, massive aesthetic overhauls just to stay relevant. Like, you expect a fresh, crazy new design every 2 years, right? But the reality is wild. The 2026 data completely shatters that idea. Mature veteran platforms are literally crushing the brand new, super hyped market entries. Turns out, things like proven reliability, mature platforms, and entrenched charging infrastructure, those matter way more to everyday buyers than just a shiny new coat of paint.
Okay, moving right along to Section 2, the 2026 sales leaderboard. This is exactly where those expectations slam into reality.
The sheer size of the gap between first and second place here is just mind-blowing. Way up at the top, we've got the Tesla Model Y. Now, this is a 6-year-old platform, guys, and it pulled in roughly 110,000 units in Europe alone. Coming in second is the Skoda, and make sure we get that right, it's SHKODA, Skoda Elroq, at 57,000 units. So the undisputed market anchor is practically doubling the volume of the guy right behind it. And sitting right there in third place, with 56,000 units, is the Tesla Model 3, a platform that is literally creeping up on its 10th anniversary. These older platforms are absolutely setting the pace for the entire industry.
Now, if you aren't in that top 3, you're stuck in what we call the drifting tier. Seriously, every other EV on the bestseller list failed to break the 50,000 unit mark in the first half of the year. Take the Renault 5, for example. Highly anticipated, a ton of hype, but it only hit about 45,000 units. It's a decent number, sure, but it definitely fell short of market expectations. And without hitting those massive volume milestones, these models are just kind of drifting. They just don't have the scale you need to get true manufacturing efficiency and actually fight back against the anchors.
To really show you how fragile some of these lower ranks are, let's look at the Leapmotor T03. This is actually the only Chinese entry in the European top 10, bringing in 32,000 units. But wait, look at the breakdown. Over 23,000 of those cars were sold in Italy alone. That is some extreme regional dependence. It perfectly highlights how incredibly tough it is for a newcomer to establish a broad, stable anchor across a whole continent. Which brings us to this absolutely staggering number, 165,871. That right there is Tesla's total unit volume across all their models for the first half of 2026 in Europe. By leaning so heavily on just 2 main cars, they've completely mastered manufacturing scale. They aren't spreading their assembly lines thin, they are laser-focused, and honestly, that focus yields absolute dominance.
But you know, legacy automakers aren't just taking this lying down. Let's look at Section 3, the German resistance, and see how the old guard is trying to fight back. First, let's get some context on the broader market. The European EV market actually exploded by 34.7% in early 2026. We're talking a jump from 1.18 million up to 1.59 million total units. That is massive momentum. But, as it turns out, a rising tide definitely does not lift all boats equally. While Tesla grabbed well over 10% of this bigger pie, the traditional German auto groups actually had a really rough negative start to the year.
With the one exception of Mercedes, who navigated things pretty well, the legacy giants are literally watching their influence shrink even while the market itself is booming.
So what is their defensive play here? Well, it's a classic price war. We're seeing German brands launch this whole new wave of electric city cars, like the ID Polo, with super aggressive starting prices around 25,000 to 26,000 euros. They're trying to undercut the anchors. But here is the catch. Actually, it's a huge catch. Price alone isn't a magic wand. You can't just instantly discount your way past a competitor who has a massive, decade-long head start in building out charging networks, streamlining their factories, and earning deep, deep brand trust. It just doesn't work that way.
All right, that brings us to Section 4, the strategic verdict. Let's pull all this together and look at the lessons for the road ahead.
So the biggest takeaway here? Trying to unseat the current market leader in 2026 is currently considered next to impossible, and here is exactly why. First, product maturity totally beats market freshness. A rock-solid, veteran car with great infrastructure is going to beat a shiny new toy in the long run every single time. Second, concentration of power beats fragmentation. Having a few dominant anchor models is just a way better strategy than juggling a huge, fragmented lineup of cars. And finally, market growth absolutely does not equal brand health. The whole industry can grow by 35%, and legacy brands can still lose their footing if they don't have that focused, structural rigidity.
Before we wrap up, I just want to take a quick second to say a huge thank you. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, for giving me your time, and for diving into the real structural why behind all these crazy market numbers with me today.
But I do want to leave you with one final provocative thought. As we look ahead to July 2027, which is actually going to be the 10th anniversary of the Model 3, if competitors are still struggling to beat a platform that was designed a literal decade ago, we really have to ask ourselves, is that a failure of their technology, or is it a failure of their narrative? Are they just building the wrong cars, or are they playing the wrong game entirely? Something to think about. Keep exploring, and I'll catch you next time.